fun. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you guys so much. My hands kind of hurt. Are your hands hurting? Sweet, cool. So everybody to my left is Dylan Edwards. He is, you have so many things, I have to read it.
Yeah, I know.
Literally so much. Okay, ACE certified personal trainer, orthopedic specialist, metabolic specialist, certified functional strength coach, steel mace coach. Don't even know what that is. That's really sounds hardcore.
Steel mace is probably what you're thinking of. Gada, as it was called in India. It's a long steel pipe with a ball at the end of it that's weighted, ranging from 7 to 10 to 30 pounds or more. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, it's okay. I'm just very impressed. Wow. Okay. Let's see. Precision nutritionist, L1 sports nutritionist, IASTM practitioner, black belt in Bushido Karate, and a full-time student pursuing a doctorate in physical therapy. DPT. Give it up for Dylan, please.
Thank you for that intro. You'll see I'll list them all out on here too. Okay, so we're going to talk about breathing. Ideal breathing is the name of this workshop or presentation, a bit of both. I'm going to define what that means. We're going to talk about what I call foundational breathing or cylindrical breathing, and then we're going to talk about a lot of different types of breathing, what breathing is. We'll just jump right into it. This may or may not be what you were thinking or what you are thinking about breathing. I know how to breathe already. I do it all the time. Which is true. But for all this stuff, have an open mind and a compassionate heart, and I think it will offer some value to you, even to your family members if you tell them about it, and I hope you do. Before I get into a few more slides, breathing is the only voluntary and involuntary system that we have. So our heart beats, but like we can't just change our heartbeat. We kind of can through breathing though. So breathing is a skeleton key for making change throughout the body. So there's a list of some of the certifications, pretty much all the certifications that I have. So as we were talking about before, I went to Oak Grove High School, which is obviously very familiar to most of you, if not all of you. I went to Harper College then for 2 years. I was Phi Theta Kappa, which is National 2-year Honor Society. Then after that, I came to a crossroads. I was thinking, well, should I continue with my education or should I just go into the business world and start working and doing what I think I'd love to do? So I chose the latter. I went and I started personal training. I started a sports nutrition company that was called Elevate Nutrition at the time, and then I kind of worked all over the place as a trainer. I was like a travel trainer, and then I found a nest for about 2 years at a sports performance center in Mount Prospect. I managed that facility. I trained at that facility. I worked with a lot of local athletes around the district, and that was very fulfilling. And after I left there, I ended up working with some doctors. I worked for intern, shadowed a neurologist, a board certified neurologist, physiologist, and then I also shadowed and worked for a licensed psychotherapist who also does something called neurofeedback, which if you ever have ever had any concussions or brain trauma, I highly recommend looking into neurofeedback. It kind of helps treat some of those issues. And then I ended up working for a big box gym. I took over the metabolic testing program, hence the metabolic specialist certification. And that's like VO2 max testing, so you may have seen people on the masks running on a treadmill, measuring the amount of oxygen that you can get per kilogram of body weight in milliliters. It has a lot of great information data that comes from that. So I've been really getting into breathing with a lot of that stuff. And then recently I decided, well, it's probably time for me to go back to school and pursue my doctorate degree. So I used to be a full-time performance trainer, and now I have an online training business where I just create content, and that's called HybridMovement.Fitness. So you see that in the bottom right corner. That's what a steel mace looks like. And I also use a lot of hammers, like Mjolnir or Thor's hammer, if you're not familiar. And I'm big on the brain, hence why there's a brain in that logo. So you see that on the slide. And my black belt, my grandfather, who has a lot to do with why I am into what I'm into. He's actually a 2-time Hall of Famer in Illinois. He's in the Boxing Hall of Fame and the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. So blessed to have had that influence. this is briefly what we're going to cover. I'm going to start with this acronym, JUICE. Without looking, anyone know what JUICE means? Although it's right there. So, JUICE is one of my favorite acronyms that a good friend of mine, Tyler Pazik, who's a sports psychologist who's worked all across the country now, and just ran an ultra marathon, which is a 100-mile marathon. He taught me this acronym, and he probably presents it better than I do, but it's jacked up, insane, contagious energy. He's had coaches break boards over their heads and do a bunch of awesome stuff, which we're not going to do here, obviously. But it's just having a lot of good energy, whether it's we're talking about breathing or anywhere else. The more energy that the presenter brings, that I bring, and that you all bring as well, that's what makes the experience. Without energy, nothing happens. So I'm going to be as energetic as I can be up here, and then we're going to get into all this other stuff as we go. So some questions. How often do you guys think about your breathing? A lot? When
I'm a swimmer.
Okay, so for sport, that's a good example. When else would you kind of consider your breathing or think about your breathing or be conscious about your breathing?
When you're stressed. Oh, sorry.
When you're stressed, yeah. You could just shout it out.
Okay, when you're stressed.
Yeah, exactly. You got an exam coming up. For example, I have a chemistry exam tomorrow. So instead of freaking out about it, I got this, I can do this, right? So exactly, when you're stressed, for sport, anything else, I mean, those are some pretty broad, encompassing statements, but those are some good examples, so good. Second question, we'll answer this in a couple slides. How much oxygen does your brain use? You can just throw out some percentages. 20%. 20%?
94.
94%?
70.
70%?
60%.
60%? Okay.
I think it changes based off of what you're doing.
That's true. That is true. Very true. It does change on what you're doing, but at rest, that is true, but at rest there is a certain percentage that may or may not have already been said. So, okay, how long can you hold your breath for? 30 seconds? More than that? 50?
No, 30.
Minute 30? I would say it depends, right? But how long all right, here's another question. How long do you think a human being can hold their breath? Like
2 minutes.
2 minutes? 5 minutes? 4 minutes?
15 minutes.
It's 3, so
That's the rule. Yeah. I used to have a slide out here that debunks that rule actually. The rule record is like 16 minutes. Navy SEAL, and Anthony or something, they might know more about that than me. I know 16 minutes is the world record. I'm pretty sure it was a trained scuba person, but yeah. But there used to be you can't go 3 days without food, 3 days without water, or 3 days without oxygen. And I would say that's debunked, but I have heard that as well. Okay, hold some of those numbers in your head. All right, so what's breathing all about? How many breaths do we take? So at rest, this is at rest. If you're moving, these numbers change, especially like per minute. So an average person at rest is about 16 breaths per minute. Over a stretch of weeks, days, your lifetime, obviously that number gets larger, so it's a lot of breaths, right? It's a lot of repetition. One quote that my grandfather, Grandmaster Beal, bestowed upon me early was repetition. Repetition is your mama, and repetition is your papa, he would tell me. And it's true. Repetition is extremely important when it comes for any learned trait or skill, right? I'm sure if you want to get better at swimming, you're not just going to not swim and then just go and break PRs and do all that stuff, right? You got to practice. Practice makes permanent. Why do we breathe? What is the purpose? What's the point? Carry oxygen through your body, is that? Carry oxygen through the body? Yeah, why do we need to do that?
Rest of your functions, your body functions.
So basically survival, right? Yeah. To not die, right? Everything needs to breathe. Some things don't even breathe oxygen. He does, the polar bear does. There's no Coca-Cola in this picture, he's not drinking Coca-Cola. But yeah, it's for survival. Some things breathe methane, we know that now. Some microorganisms actually breathe methane. Does breathing influence your health? Yes, it does. So on the left in that top right image, you're going to see ideal posture, which is like a nice reverse S curve in the neck and all that. And then you have a kyphotic, flat back, and lordotic postures. As far as posture is concerned, like you've probably all heard text neck and all that stuff. I'm sure that's a big phrase or big thing that's being talked about with all moving your head down. And does anyone know for every inch that you look forward, how many pounds of pressure does that add? Anyone know that? So for every inch that you look down, you flex your cervical spine, that's about 10 pounds of pressure. The average head is about 10 pounds. I got a big head, I might be at like 12 pounds, I don't know. But every inch that you go forward is another 10 pounds. So if you're here, 7 inches is roughly, if it's 1 inch per 10 pounds, how many pounds? 70 pounds on your neck. Is that good or bad? It's bad, right? Here's what I'll say. It's bad if you get stuck in that position. If you just do this every once in a while, then I should probably go up here. Then it's not horrible. It's only bad if you get stuck in that position. So some people get stuck in these positions. I've worked with many people who kind of develop poor posture over a period of time, and through breathing, we're able to correct a lot of that. Not even just through movement, but sometimes just through breathing in itself, and I'll explain what I mean by that a bit deeper. So there's a lot of stuff that happens here. So as far as the text neck and forward neck, or anterior head carriage as we call it, there's a lot of muscular things that start to happen. So your posture is like your skeleton, but the muscles hold the skeleton, and fascia holds up all that stuff together. We'll talk about fascia in a little bit, but essentially a few things happen, especially with this. This does not happen to everybody, but it's very prominent today. The sternocleidomastoids, the front muscles, get short. The levator scapula, the scalenes, which connect from your shoulder blades all the way into your neck. So if you can feel tightness here ever, it's probably from looking forward too much and getting fixated forwards. These get really long, like too long. So if we're having a good conversation over here, right, and like this is probably pretty good. This is like, okay, this is uncomfortably. Now if we're over here and we're trying to have a normal conversation, like that's kind of, it's more of like we're just shouting to each other. The signal's not as ideal. That's kind of what happens in the neck if things get too long, and other muscles get affected too. So it's harder to hold up your head, fatigue kicks in, it's harder for your brain to signal throughout your body, and you get fixated in positions. And then the last one, so when I worked with a licensed psychotherapist who did neurofeedback, he was working with a lot of veterans who suffer from PTSD and deal with stress. And what they're starting to find is there's something called the myelin sheath that covers nerve cells, right? And the myelin sheath is like, think of it like a shield. It's like the protector of the nerve cell. Well, if you get poor posture, you're a stress breather, and you breathe into your stress. What I mean by that is if you're stressed out and you breathe in a certain way, you could actually like reinforce that signal or that system of being in a stressed state. If you do that too much, and this can happen just by breathing from being stressed out too much and like really reinforcing it. This can happen from any sort of like trauma, from sport, from life. If this happens too much and you breathe into it, the myelin sheath actually no longer does its job, and all the nerves start to protrude through that myelin sheath. And what that means is any sort of normal signals or normal things that should flow through and just pass through without affecting those nerve cells start to affect those nerve cells. Does that sound good or bad? We don't want that. So that means that normal things start to stress you out, which we don't want that at all. And again, this could all be fixed. This has been shown to be fixed through breathing. So I'm not trying to scare you like oh, I see people sitting up a little straighter. This is not a scary tactic. I'm just showing you what can happen. This does not happen overnight. This takes like a long time, years, decades, sometimes even, right? So, but it's good to think about. So it all starts now, right? Okay, breathing in the brain. Who said 20%? 20% is the answer for at rest. I'll show you how to use that a little later. So 20%, and the brain's about 2% of your body weight, okay? 2% of your body weight, maybe 3%, right, if you have a bigger brain. But 1/5 of the oxygen usage. So the brain is oxygen needy and oxygen greedy. The brain doesn't do well without oxygen. As far as life on Earth as a whole, anyone know the percentage of oxygen in the air that we breathe now?
25.
What was that, 45? 20? It's about 21% right now. Millions of years ago, it got as high as about 30%, and also millions of years ago, it got as low as about 15%. When oxygen was more abundant, life was still okay. In fact, it was still thriving, just kind of like it is today. When it got to about 15%, just from all the paleontology and all the different sciences colliding to figure stuff out, 15% oxygen on Earth was not good for living organisms. Like, life dropped substantially. So oxygen, we know, is extremely important. Plasticity. Anyone know what that word means? Plasticity.
Like your brain can, like, not fix itself, but like if something happens to it, it can fix itself.
Basically, it fixes itself. It can adapt.
Yes.
I'll give you that word. Plasticity means adaptable. There's neuroplasticity, and there's like muscle plasticity. In a psychology class, I learned that there was a girl, I think she was in like 3rd or 4th grade, and they found a tumor in one hemisphere of her brain. And this is like one of the worst case scenarios, but basically nothing they could do would save her. So drastic times call for drastic measures. So some neurosurgeon came up with the idea of, hey, let's just take that half of the brain out. And when I was learning that, I was like, I didn't even know it was possible. How's that going to work? Well, they did it to save her life. And I guess it was, whatever happens after, at least she's still alive. Well, after about a year to 18 months of a lot of occupational therapy, a lot of physical therapy, she was back in school. She had tutors to keep her up with her classmates and stuff. And she had to take some time, of course, to recover. But they showed a video of her. I'll never forget this. I haven't even seen this since I saw it in this class 4 years ago, but I think about it all the time. I should actually include it in this next time, but you would have no idea that half her brain was not there. It's pretty powerful stuff. That is plasticity at its finest, I would say, or its most powerful. And that's at the big scale. This happens at very small scales, right? And oxygen is the skeleton key for plasticity and for adaptation. The more oxygen we have in our brain specifically, the better the nervous system can rewire itself to do its job or other neurons' jobs. And the last one is studies show that breathing affects perception. So we can do things like time travel when we want. So if you can upregulate your breathing and you're good at controlling your breathing, to you, time can actually become slower. That may or may not happen at will, that's debatable, but there are studies starting to show that, and that's, I think, pretty cool, especially if we're training astronauts, which I would love to do someday. Okay, DNS, I've attended several of these courses. Dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, it's a mouthful. Essentially, that's a baby and that's an adult. How they came up with this stuff, you'll see it more on the next slides, was they just watched babies move. And they were like, wow, this is ideal, they move perfectly, which they do. I don't recommend trying it, but a lot of people know that if you take an infant and put them in water, they could just swim. It just happens. We don't really know why. It's just kind of like an innate skill, and then you kind of forget that sometimes, or a lot of people will forget that and have to relearn how to swim. Well, a lot of these movement patterns that we're born with, they're just ingrained in us. We have the software somehow, and then as we age and learn stuff, we forget it. And this is all about bringing adults or senior citizens or anyone back to that state, or at least using the movement patterns of the crawl to walk phase to get better. I use this, since I learned this, I use it all the time with all my clients, and it's all based on plasticity. Neuroplasticity, muscle plasticity, it all has to do with oxygen and breathing, and I'll get into that more. So, okay, first of all, who knows what this movie is?
The Princess Bride.
Yes, great movie if you haven't seen it. I love this quote, especially. Who's heard of diaphragmatic breathing? Has anyone heard that? A couple hands, yeah. Who's heard of belly breathing? Okay, that's a little more common, right? Either one, diaphragmatic or belly breathing. I would argue that that word does not mean what you may think it means. Let's go with belly breathing. Someone take a crack at what do you think that belly breathing means? Yeah.
Is it kind of like breathing with your belly? Like you when you breathe in, you push your belly out. When you breathe, when you breathe out or whatever, it goes in.
And where would you say your belly's at? Like right here, right? Anyone else? Does that agree? I think I saw another hand. Is that a, yeah?
I think it's like when you're like trying to like use your whole lung. I don't know, I can tell a difference when I'm just like breathing normally versus like trying to focus on like breathing like in as much air as possible.
Okay. Yeah, it's like trying to fill up your lungs as possible. Where specifically are you trying to fill that air with belly breathing? Or diaphragmatic breathing?
My teacher, my gym teacher would do like these like breathing things and then try to fill up our chest and like our stomach. We'd try to feel like it all rise.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so yeah, I agree with that. Definitely we're trying to as far as what belly breathing means, I think a lot of people think that. I used to think that before I became hip to this knowledge. Or diaphragmatic breathing is the same thing. A lot of people will think, like, when I used to take yoga classes, like a lot of people would focus on like, oh, breathe through the stomach, breathe through here. Belly breathing is like stress relieving breathing, or chest breathing is stress breathing. I hear a lot of, right? And that's where I don't think it means what people think it means. So the diaphragm is like right in the middle of our torso, right under our ribs, and it connects to some of the ribs actually. We'll talk about that in a second. It looks like a jellyfish or like an umbrella that's inside you. And when you breathe in, it contracts and everything else expands. It contracts not just through the belly though. That's why I like using this meme. It's not just into the belly, it's also into the chest, it's also into the sides, it's also into the back. Okay? If we just belly breathe, which is happening on the right, the perforated lines for that like little egg shape, that's just showing force. The force is going forwards. You see that like open alligator, open scissors as we call it. And you see the red lines is like as far as what's happening to the tissue. The tissue in the front is getting raised. What's happening in the back on that one on the left?
It's kind of bending.
It's bending into each other, right? What do we call that? Compression, I heard, or pinching. Pinching, compression, same thing. In the front it's stretching, right? So we get stretching in the front, compression in the back. Does that look like it's good for your back? No, right? That's compressing your spine. And a lot of things, when I worked with a chiropractor who did physical therapy, there's a lot of like L4, L5 issues. Well, if you have some back issues and you're breathing this way, and you're taking 16 breaths per minute on average, plus or minus, right? Repetitions your mama, repetitions your papa, that's repetitiously not helping your back at all. Like it might be even making it worse, I would argue. So this is what we're looking for. This nice little egg on the right, not that like egg on the left, that's your egg, the yolk's on you, right? That was a corny joke. Okay, cylindrical breathing. This is the word that I like to say and how I like to imagine as far as what foundational ideal breathing is. So let's do a little thought experiment. If you fall off this ladder, not that you want to fall off any ladder, but if you did fall off this ladder, what happens?
You hit the cage.
What was that?
You hit the cage.
You hit the cage. Some other answers I heard?
You fall straight down.
Fall straight down. If you fall and hit the cage, do you have a chance of maybe like rescuing yourself? Like you can maybe hit it and like have some sort of protection because those rings are there, right? What if it's just a ladder and none of that's there and you fall? I heard someone say hit the ground. Like that's what you're gonna do for sure if they're not there and you fall off. If you fall back and that's there, at least you have a chance of hitting something and then coming back to safety. It's kind of a weird analogy, and we're not exactly as cylindrical as that, but our torso, all of our torsos are cylindrical. We're not just a flat piece of paper. We have depth. It's a full circle. And the diaphragm is for sure a cylinder shape. So this is how I want you to think about breathing for at least the rest of the time we have. And we're going to build on this. So real quick, let's do an experiment. Well, actually, Okay, we'll do this first. Breathing's a force. I'll show you. Ready? How did that happen? How did that paper move? I'll do it again. Magic. Air pressure, force of air, right? Actually, like 100 years ago, or a little more than that, 120, no one really knew what happened. Like, we didn't know why that worked, but we know it works. Before we do our little experiment, a few more slides, and we're going to put stuff into action. Okay, so the force within. Air is a force, the breath is a force, it's a force inside. So we have the muscles, we have the skeleton, and I mentioned fascia briefly. Anyone know what fascia is, or heard the word fascia?
Is it like myofascia?
Yeah, myofascia.
And don't you have to like hold the stretch for like 90 seconds in order for it to be like released or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Fascia takes a lot longer to respond than normal muscle tissue and stuff. And it actually takes around 6 months of repetition to make constant lasting change. Good reminder, like plus or minus a couple months, but 6 is like the average. So yeah, it takes a long time to adapt. So on the other hand,
I was gonna say deep tissue.
deep tissue, like as far as deep tissue massage or Graston or Boschat or any of those scraping techniques you'll see like a physical therapist or a chiropractor. Yeah. Who's eaten an orange? Probably most people have eaten an orange and or seen an orange. What happens when you peel that apart? There's like a white layer that holds the skin on it and then holds all like the awesome juicy little components of it. That's fascia. That's the fascia of the orange. That's literally the same thing that's in our body, holding things together. It's like the net. Dr. Thomas Myers created this book, Anatomy Change, and this thought process. There's 12 myofascial meridians, according to him, which is like how the body's fascially connected. And that's like, has to do with hydration, it has to do with force transmission, it has to do with it's like a whole can of worms I could lecture on for like 4 hours. So just know that fascia is important. It holds everything together. Some people argue we don't have 260 plus muscles, but we have one muscle working 260 plus fascial planes, which that's a big paradigm shift. And so there's a lot to do with breathing too. Breathing helps affect this. So there's some of the meridians. Why I like this a lot and like to share this is just shows everything is connected. Everything is connected, everything is connected, and breathing is what is the skeleton key for making change. When I used to do physical therapy and we build under insurance, it would drive me crazy. Someone would come in with some issue, shoulder issue, hip issue, or whatever, and I would try to all right, let's address the ankle or address the knee. And not every time, that's not always accepted through insurance because it's not the area of pain or discomfort, which I personally have a problem with because everything's connected, right? Okay, IAP, intra-abdominal pressure. What does this sound like? Intra, what does intra mean? Within. Abdominal, abs, and pressure. Who's ever eaten Thanksgiving dinner and like, oh, check this out. You press out your belly, you make a food baby. That's basically what this is, okay? Imagine you have a balloon inside and you're trying to blow up that balloon, and it's not just gonna go through the belly like a food baby, right? It's gonna go everywhere. It's gonna go through your sides, into the back. It's gonna go the full 360 degrees of a cylinder. And that's how we get force transmission to help breathe or to help racing with breathing. Zone of apposition. This is just your rib attachments to the diaphragm. That's such a fancy word for saying that. So your ribs can rotate individually. So long story short, if I do this and rotate my ribs up, what happens to my back? It arches, right? And it compresses, just like that one picture. Just like this picture. So the ribs go up. You see that kind of here. The ribs are facing up. It's not really depicted too well, but the back compresses then, right? So where do I want my ribs to be for ideal breathing? Level or straight or down. Ribs down, you'll hear that a lot. Just don't let them come up. Try to bring your ribs up without your back arching. I'll give you $1. It won't happen. Okay, cylinder breathing. This is I love this diagram because it kind of starts to depict what is this guy talking about? What do you mean by cylinder breathing? How do I do it? And like, I'm a big visual learner personally, so this helps me a lot. So if we took a cup, if I took this bottle, for example, and I poured water in it, imagine this is water, or we can think of it, this is gaseous pressure from your air, but liquid pressure will do. If I pour water in here, is the water just going to start to go up? What's going to happen first? I heard go around, I think. Right? It's going to go out. It's going to go out. Yes, exactly. It's going to go out before it goes up. This is your hips. These are your shoulders. It's going to go up and out into the cylinder of the lower abdomen first. It's going to keep going up, 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 up. And it's going to fill up the chest as well, too. So your PE teacher is doing a great job with having you guys do those exercises. So that's the diaphragm contracting when you inhale, and the pressure's going every which way, and that's going to lead to that image on the right, on the left, but to the right. Who's worn a weight belt in gym class or for weight training? Or I see some hands. Who's worn a belt? Okay. Same thing. You go to dinner, maybe you have a nice dinner, you're dressed nice, you got a belt on, you eat too much. I gotta take this down a notch. What does the belt do? Who said they wore a belt? Let's go. Okay, why do we wear a belt?
Keeps like your pants up.
Okay, exactly. It keeps your pants up. How?
It tightens it.
Just tightens it. Okay, and it puts pressure in. As far as a weight training belt, why do we wear weight training belts?
Keep you straight back.
Keep you straight back. Why? How does it work?
Just holds it there to keep your back.
You feel pressure on the belt, right? Like you usually pull it pretty tight, and you pressurize into the belt. What does the belt then do? And it's on the answer's right there. You push out, the belt presses back in. Well, I added the picture of the belt. That's actually your abdomen. That's like your whole cylinder. You pressurize out, your skin is there to help like push back in, and all the muscles associated with it. Otherwise, when we took a breath in, we would just like explode. Nothing would stay inside. So here's a quick experiment. Take your hands, and just put your hands around your hips, not just on your hips, but around your hips, like all over the soft tissue. Spread your fingers so that you can feel movement. You have 3 points of contact: the fingertips, the C shape of the hand, and the thumb. But without even breathing, I want you to just try and like make a food baby, quote unquote, and try and like just press your muscles into your hands, like you're wearing a weight belt or you're wearing a belt, and you're trying to like just press everything out into it and push in every which way. Try and do that first. You could relax and then try and do it again. People feeling movement? You may or may not. This takes repetition, right? Sometimes you might be like, I don't feel anything. But we'll get there. If you do feel it or if you don't feel it, now try and take a breath. If you feel it, try and make that pressure and then breathe into it. It may be hard to like stabilize and normalize too. Sometimes you might even like start to shake. It's common too. It's your nervous system trying to figure it out. Do that a couple times and just start to feel it, because we're going to build on that. Another great diagram. This is just showing like all the different parts of the torso, the pelvic floor, the spine, the multifidus, which is like the muscles that go around the spine. Liquid ball. Okay. That's the pressure. It's going every which way like a balloon. Benefits of ideal breathing, there's a lot of them. So increased energy levels, increased posture, increased VO2 max, and I've measured this when I was a metabolic specialist getting people on the treadmill. Carl Lewis, who influenced the creation of DNS, had a quote. It's right up there. No thought or movement process is optimized if breathing is not optimized, essentially. So I'll say that in my own way. If you're not breathing to the maximum, you're leaving performance on the table. And I don't mean life performance, I mean human performance. Or I don't mean athletic performance, I mean life performance or human performance. Okay, let's sum it up. What have we gone over so far? Give me some, just, it could be a bullet point. Cylindrical diaphragm, yep.
Brain uses 20% of your oxygen.
There we go. Breather fit. You want to back that up?
Belly breathing can be bad.
Yes. Yes. Anything else?
10 like drop your neck an inch, it like puts 10 pounds of pressure.
Yeah, that's an important one. So try and bring the phone up too. It's hard to do, but plasticity. It's a good word. I love that word.
only voluntary system.
Say that again?
It's the only voluntary system.
It's the only voluntary and involuntary system. So it's autonomic. It happens without us thinking about it, but at the same time, we can think about it and influence it. So it's both. It's the only system that's both. The myelin sheath. That's a good one. That covers the nerves.
If you put an infant in the pool, they'll know how to swim.
Yes, it's kind of crazy, right? Anything else? We'll get a few more of these checkpoints. So, okay. Okay. So we can actually move the chairs now, and we can occupy some space on the floor. This is what I was talking about as far as DNS and watching babies develop. We apply this to movement. LeBron James, George St. Pierre,
It's getting serious.
those are a couple big names, right? They've all worked with practitioners that do this stuff. So even at the highest levels of athletic performance, people use this stuff. So we're gonna start with this right here. This is like 4-month position or supine. So if you're comfortable, we're gonna get onto the floor. We're gonna get right here, and actually we'll put the hands around the hips again. Get the knees at or above your hips. If you've ever done like flutter kicks or anything and put your legs out, what happens to your back? It kind of arches and gets painful. We'll put our hands underneath to flatten the back. But if you bring your knees right above the hips, you're gonna keep a nice flat back. So knees at or above the hips, hands around the hips like we just did. And same thing, I want you to start by just pressurizing. Without breathing, press into your hands, and then start to breathe. Give me 10 normal breaths. Like you're breathing in and out of a straw. Going at your own volume, your own pace. Once you hit 10, go ahead and look up. You can drop your feet for a second. Okay, for this next one, might need a little more space. We're going to do something called a dead bug. Think about crawling or climbing a ladder. So I hear right? So use this breathing too. If you've done these before and you found them to be somewhat challenging, if you use these breathing principles, I promise you, you'll feel a lot more stable, a lot easier. If you've never done it, just focus on the breathing and try and make it as excellent as you can. So you're going to be right here now. Same thing, you don't need your hands there, but try and pressurize first. And then you're going to breathe in as you climb a ladder in your imagination. So you're going to extend opposite leg, opposite arm. Come back. Get like 2 or 3 each side, and then we'll look up again. You're going to climb that ladder.
Okay.
Try not to kick anyone in the head.
Wait.
Once you do like 2 or 3, drop the feet again, look out. Sometimes you'll do same side, try and do opposites. Awesome work. Okay, easy, hard. Easy? Okay. Somewhere in the middle. Okay, here's the next one for you. I like to call these James Bonds. So we're gonna be like, have you ever seen the movies where Hugh gives him a nice little jack and he can go on 2 wheels and drive on 2 wheels? We're gonna go on our 2 wheels. So we're gonna think one side shoulder, one side hip. Everything stays together. We're statues. Our legs and our arms are together as best as we can. I'm gonna see a lot of this, but you're gonna try and keep everything together and just come to the side without crashing into the floor. If you crash on the floor, just come right back and reset. Try to go like 1 or 2 each way. See how far you can get. And then come right back.
That's simple.
And populate a little more space if you need to. Yep, you should have your hands right in front of you like you're holding something. Do like 1 or 2, and then we're going to do one last one. All right, easy or hard? A little more challenging, right? So that's anti-rotation so you're rotating, but you're resisting rotation. That's really important. It's an important skill for your core, for your whole body. All right. Now for the grand finale, and then we'll move on. You're going to tilt. Once you find your good volume level, go ahead and climb that ladder. Use your breath, right? If you start to get the humana, just kind of resettle. Take a couple grounding breaths. And go right into it. Do like one or two each way if you can. There we go. All right, once you do about one or two each way, go ahead and stand up. You can take a seat again. Great work. On a foam roller? On like a half roller? Or a full roller? Those are tough, yeah. Those are really good for your spine too. All the soft tissue.
Just like falling over.
Awesome. So obviously it gets progressively harder as we go. And that is training that's training your respiration as well too. That's training your core. Obviously you probably felt your core light up a little bit and other muscles, but that's using your breathing and integrating that into your motion, which is super important. We couldn't really move without breathing. So this is just to get a little better. And we can move through all of these, the Turkish get-up squat, pistol squat, whatever you want. The more ideally you breathe, the better we'll get. Who has an Apple Watch in here? Anybody? Not with you, but you've seen it. This kind of looks familiar, maybe?
Yeah, it's the breathing.
The Breathe app. There we go. I use it all the time. So that's a good depiction of like breathing in and out of the cylinder. But that's also at a certain rhythm. That's at 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. It's called box breathing. 4 seconds inhale, 4 second exhale. 4 second inhale, 4 second hold. 4 second exhale, 4 second hold. We call that box breathing. Some people change this tempo, but 4 is easy to remember, right? 4, 4, 4, 4. And it channels your parasympathetic nervous system. So we have two nervous systems. We have parasympathetic, and knows what the other one is? Sympathetic, right? What is that nickname? What do some people call that?
Fight or flight.
Fight or flight. There we go. You know what we call the parasympathetic system?
Like slowing down.
Slow it down, or that's another nickname, kind of like fight or flight.
Wait, rest and digest.
Rest and digest or rest and recover. Very good. Awesome. All right. Get the last one here. There we go.
Thanks.
Okay. Rest and digest, rest and recover. Absolutely. It's great knowledge. I'll explain what these are in a second too. I only had 2, unfortunately. I would have brought one for everybody. Okay, so 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. Real quick. Go ahead and try that. Okay, so everything after this, including this box breathing, this is all like extra credit kind of. Everything that we talked about before, that's like your prerequisite. That's always happening. You're always breathing into that cylinder, okay? So go ahead and try this. 4 seconds, 4 second hold. 4 second exhale, 4 second hold. Just go ahead and do that real quick. You can keep going if you'd like. I just wanted you to get a little bit of practice in and kind of feel what that feels like. So it's a very calming style of breathing. And that's why we use it, and that's why I talk about it. The Navy SEALs use it. The people who jump out of airplanes use it. First responders use it. When I used to work for the neurologist, she would talk about it for people who have anxiety and need to calm themselves down. So if you have an adrenaline dump or your sympathetic nervous system is like heightened and it's way too heightened, this is what you can do to influence your nervous system and kind of change the channel and change the station, so to speak. And almost immediately, within a few minutes, you start to feel a good sense of calmness, basically. That job was kind of stressful, right? That's a firefighter who works with bomb defusal. So It's a high-risk job. There's a lot of stress involved. It could be like one wire, right? I mean, that's extremely stressful. So to keep himself calm, I would almost guarantee he's doing some sort of breathing exercise. Now, it may not be 4-4-4-4. It might be like 4. Some people mess with it. Some people teach other ones, but 4 is the easiest to remember for me. So you can practice this again. If you try this, so I have a chemistry exam tomorrow. I already mentioned that. So this is what I'll use to like recover and like walk in and not be like freaked out, right? It helps. It definitely helps. And the more you add senses, the more real it gets. So say we'll use my chemistry. So I'm going to walk into my chemistry exam, right? And I'm going to think about doing it before. So I'm going to breathe in this way. And I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to visualize. I'm going to think about the exact place I sit at. I'm going to think about what are the colors and what color shirt am I wearing taking the exam? What does it smell like in the room? How hot is it? Can I feel the temperature in my mind? The more that you do this with this style of breathing, the more effective it is. The more senses you add to visualization or any sort of calming exercise, the better it gets, because the more real it gets, because your brain, like in real time right now, you may not be thinking about it, but you're for sure feeling temperature, you for sure your olfactory, everything, your olfactory bulbs are working, everything's working. You just may or may not be conscious of it, but it's happening. So if you can recreate that mentally and visually, it's a lot more real when it actually happens. So, okay, box breathing in a nutshell.
What de-stresses?
De-stresses. Just shout them out.
Good for your nervous system.
Good for your nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system.
It's you all in 4s.
4s, yes. It doesn't have to be, but for this, yes. That's the way I teach it. 4, 4, 4, 4.
De-stress.
Incorporate
De-stresses. Add more senses, yes. Okay, we move on. Nose versus mouth breathing, I get this question a lot. Science really says right now we don't know. There's not enough data. People have been studying long enough. There are some studies that show like it's very good. Some studies show like that doesn't do anything. I follow a lot of coaches that promote nasal breathing and are like creating apps for it and stuff. And I think it has a lot of benefit. I was taught when I was doing boxing training, I was taught that mouth breathing causes more exhaustion and nose breathing is more relaxing. Now, I felt that. It may also be because when you have a mouth guard in, if you're playing any sort of combat or contact sport and you have a mouth guard in, it's obviously harder to pull more air in, right? So science sometimes takes like 10 years plus or minus to catch up to what people are actually doing. So if anyone in here goes into science or physiology or anything in the sciences like that, I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see data that shows like, yeah, just go ahead and breathe through the nose. But it's hard to breathe through the nose for some people, right? Like it's getting humid out, there's big rain, the allergies happen, right? So just breathe cylindrically at the end of the day. Also, if you do want to train nasal breathing, you could try this too. You could close one nostril and try and breathe through it. You could close the other nostril and try and breathe through it. One may function better than the other. So like you can test that right now. Which one should you train if you find one's pulling in less air? The one that's pulling in less air, right? To try and bring it up to speed. So some people who will try and do box breathing through one nose, just resting to try and like really channel the parasympathetic system. Some people say that like getting the nose hairs influences the parasympathetic system as well too. So, okay, perfect timing. Who's seen this guy before? Yes. What's that?
Have you heard of Yes Theory?
Yes Theory. It's a
Yeah.
YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing with it.
Okay, I do. I watch some of their. That's a good channel actually. Anybody else? He's been on a lot of podcasts. I've been talking about him for like 5 years now. I was lucky to see him on a show called Stan Lee's Superhumans, which was on History Channel. He was just one of the guys that was on there, and I was doing martial arts and breathing at the time, and I just thought I had to try this and do this. So I've been talking about him for quite some time now, luckily. So that's Mount Kilimanjaro. That's frozen salt water. frozen salt water. It's pretty cold, right? If salt water can freeze. That's in New York in Times Square, breaking a Guinness World Record. He was like he was in the ice for like an hour 58, and that's just, he's in a lake right there. It's all cold, okay. Film right here.
Cold is mercy, righteous. It brings you direct in the depth of yourself. You're not thinking, your emotions stop. You are just surviving. And it brings you in the purity of the physiology as well as the soul. And you get in a different plane than our conditioning. And that makes you a free man.
What's special about Wim is that he kind of has this mind over body control that's pretty phenomenal. When he is exposed to the cold, his body just physically reacts differently from a lot of other people.
Right now, I'm holding a 26 Guinness World Records, and all related to extreme cold. My records range from staying in the ice for 1 hour 53 minutes in direct contact with the ice, running fastest half marathon barefoot, climbing Kilimanjaro in record time in shorts, swimming underneath the ice for longest distance.
Wim is a very special person. He has an aura to him that is very positive energy, but what you can see when he begins to breathe, he has the ability to focus his mind and body together in a higher function than most can do.
I created a method. The components are breathing, mindset, and cold exposure. Gradual, non-forced cold exposure. And that's to optimize the mind-body connection.
Wim has figured out ways, namely through breath work and through exposure to cold, to take conscious control over aspects of his physiology that, for most people, they simply can't tune into and control.
The cold, my warm friend, it brings about a whole lot of more energy, and that together with breathing makes you so powerful. But then you lose your wife, and it all rumbles down. 4 children I had with my wife, and I was to be with her forever. She was the love of my life. She died. She suicided. It's a black hole within yourself. It breaks your heart, and you don't know why, but the train of daily life is going on, and you gotta catch up, otherwise you lose it. So I had to be there for my children. And yes, we created a new nest. My children made me survive in that time, but nature healed my wounds. The cold gave me a direct understanding of deeper breathing and how to heal a broken heart. Then I went and did all kinds of remarkable challenges. Apparently, they found it very remarkable and great and spectacular. So I came in contact with television, one after the other. They challenged me more. Hey, go swim 50 meters under the ice. Go and swim 100 meters under the ice. Climb Mount Everest in shorts. That led up that the scientists became curious. Hey, what this man is doing is not possible physiologically.
The science of what Wim Hof method does is one of the primary interests of my lab now, because it is so powerful and it's been shown to be powerful in the immune system. We believe it will also hold some real potential for treatment of neurologic diseases.
And this breathing technique brings you right into the deepest part of our physiology. Anybody can do it. So you become the alchemist of your own chemistry. Let's do this. Just breathe in. And let it go. Fully in. We become alkaline. More oxygen is getting in toward all cells. Then the alkalinity makes the chemistry right in our body. Then we are able to take a last inhale after 30, 35 of these breaths. Deeply in, letting go, and stop.
That's actually the closest one.
Wim Hof method is neither distress nor eustress, thrilling. It's somewhere right in between where I believe adrenaline is high and cortisol is low, which gives the person who's doing the method this incredible feeling of well-being and control over their own physiology and mental state.
Why I teach this method? To show that with a simple method out of nature, we are able to tackle the greatest problems, which is depression, fear, anxiety, and pain. People with chronic pain. That's all unnecessary suffering going on, and all these industries keep it on and say, yeah, that's normal, and I think that's sick.
If it turns out that non-ingestible approaches, such as breath work or cold exposure, can approach some of the potency that medications can provide or have failed to provide, then it's quite possible that one can heal from the inside.
Guess what? We found the proof to tap into our body and mind, enabling us to become happy, strong, and healthy.
All right. What are some thoughts on that? Do you think that any of that was possible? Absolutely not, right? Yeah, I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, there are things on there that he's done. He's hung in the polar circle from a pinky on a helicopter. Why? I don't know. To show that he can. But after he does all these feats, what's really cool, like after he was in direct contact with ice for almost 2 hours, he gets out and like does the splits and does yoga and does the shelf and all this stuff to show that like his muscles haven't atrophied. He's still able to control his body. The studies that he was talking about that they did, the proof is they injected him with an endotoxin, an E. coli endotoxin, which is supposed to make you like very ill. And when he was like hooked up to all that stuff, and they had one like measuring what's happening in his blood, he proved that while he was breathing and in the cold and doing his focused like meditation, you could call it, he was producing antibodies, which antibodies are proteins that fight inflammation and infection. He was doing that consciously at will by breathing. So they thought he was like a genetic outlier. Okay, you're a freak of nature. And he said, no, anyone can do this. Like the monks and stuff that I trained with to kind of learn this were doing it long before me. I'm just the first one to bring it to science. So they did it. They've since had control groups and other groups do his training or not do his training and get injected with that endotoxin. And all the people that do not train with him and don't do that, they all get like really sick. And hopefully they get compensated well for participating in that study. And all the ones that do train with him like don't even break a fever. Harvard has done studies on him. Oxford has done studies with him. Alistair Overeem, UFC fighters, trained with him. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. He's been on Yes Theory, London Real, all the major podcasts that are out there. Oprah has done events with him. Laird Hamilton, Orlando Bloom, a lot of people are being influenced by this guy for good reason. So, like he said, you become the alchemist of your own chemistry, and like that happens like almost immediately. And we're gonna put this method into practice in a second, but it happens like pretty quick. And then after you do that, the benefits like keep going. Like it happens an hour, 60 minutes and beyond. I'm not gonna go through every single one. I'll go through number 6. That's the big one I like. I should have included the vagus nerve. So it influences the vagus nerve, which is like This is like the big guns. So that's not even all of it, but that's the vagus nerve. And it keeps going. It runs through your arms and your legs. It goes right to your brain. That's all one thing. So that, you tap into that during the breathing method, which allows you to gain conscious influence over the autonomic immune system. The autonomic immune system was called that because we were supposed to have no influence of that. That's why whenever they came up with that name, like automatic, autonomic, okay. Well, that's not true, and they're rewriting physiology books now. Like all the current material is starting to have the Iceman chapter as his nickname is. Okay. So it used to be an alternative method. You'd be called a charlatan or you're a woo-woo artist if you talked about breathing, especially in this style. And there was actually an investigative journalist from New York that flew out to the Netherlands, where he's from, to do his seminars and to like discredit him and disprove him. And he's now, after going through his method, he's now one of his biggest advocates and has wrote like 3 books about him. And he started out as trying to like defame him and debunk him, right? Chilling while you're chilling. Anyone can learn this. So it used to be 4 days. He would take people of all ages, 12 to 78 years old, maybe even older, who've had heart attacks, cirrhosis of the liver, this or that, and they would do his breathing style, gradual cold immersion for 4 days, and then they would go climb a mountain. Mount Śnieżka in Poland would be the one that they would climb. And doctors were saying, oh, you're going to kill people, they're going to die. No one's died ever doing that, but they all did something that no one would think. People would think that healthy individuals couldn't climb a mountain in their shorts, let alone someone in their 70s. Well, when everyone was giving him grief for doing it in 4 days, he's like, you're right, we'll do it in 2. So he now does 2-day seminars, even sometimes now he does it in like an hour. Okay, so we're gonna put this into practice, but before we do, really quick, there are some things to consider.
Welcome to this step-by-step HybridMovement video. We like to give you the best outcomes without any damage. It's very important that you watch this instructional video to the end before you start this course. Pay attention to every detail. First rule, listen to your body and never force. The breathing exercises are simple, but they go deep. Always do the breathing exercises in a safe environment, sitting or lying on a couch or bed. Don't do the breathing exercises in a situation where it might be dangerous to faint. So don't do it in the water, in a bath, or driving a vehicle. How to prepare for the breathing. Always start on an empty stomach to get the most out of the exercise. Make yourself at ease. Lay down, relax. The body, relaxed, is able to store up the most of oxygen. Set your intention before you start. And start doing your breathing exercises. You can track your retention times, but it is not mandatory. We know it's fun to have some competition, but this is not about it. It is about having a great experience and just feel great afterwards. When you do the cold exposure, it's great.
We'll leave it there because that's where we're going to stop. So then you do gradual cold immersion after the breathing. You start off, go into a shower. If you don't like cold, most of us hate cold, right? Do it 1 second, once you start to tense up, stop, turn it to warm, or just get out the next day, do 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and so on and so forth. And eventually you build up a cold tolerance. Cold training is actually some of the best cardiovascular training you can do, because when you get into the cold, what happens to all the blood vessels and capillaries and everything? What does cold want those to do? Constrict, right? So if you're breathing to create a balance of thermodynamics in your body, you are fighting that restriction. So you're training every single inch of blood vessel in your body, and there's many, many inches of them, thousands and millions actually. Okay, so we're gonna put that breathing to practice now. Okay, so you can do it seated, you can lie on the floor if you want to, whatever's comfortable. I'm gonna time you for 1 minute. We're gonna do a few rounds of this. Whatever's most comfortable, lay down, sit down, it's all up to you.
No, don't.
You can sit down if you want to. If you're more comfortable sitting, stay sitting. Okay. So, first rule of thumb, it's all cylindrical, okay? It's all cylindrical, that is the foundations of ideal breathing. 2, like he said, it's not forced, it's all to your comfort level. You may feel lightheadedness, that might happen. That's your brain being flooded with oxygen. You might feel tingly, that's your brain being flooded with oxygen. You can go at different speeds. You can breathe in quick, like rapid speed, like maybe like a lawnmower, rabbit, or turtle, so you can breathe quick, or you can breathe slow. The trick is you're trying to you're trying to really focus on the inhale and bring in as much oxygen as possible. We're not trying to exhale as fully as possible though. We're just going to relax on the exhale. Just the right amount of carbon dioxide leaves, and then we're trying to pull in more oxygen right as soon as possible. So you're going to hear me like hyperventilate. I'm just trying to make noise so you hear me. Although you can make that noise too to really try and pull in oxygen. So I'm going to go fast. This is what it should kind of sound like. Or you can go slow. And take like more big lumbering breaths, okay? So 1 minute on whatever cadence you want. This is your pace. Let's go ahead and start now. 1 minute. Let's go 2 more breaths. Last breath. All right. How are we feeling? You feeling lightheaded, tingly?
Yeah.
Lightheaded a little bit? Okay. No one feels bad. Everyone feels good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Should be comfortable. Tell me otherwise. Okay. So now we're going to do breath retention. I asked at the beginning, how long can you hold your breath for? We had a variety of answers. I heard like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 minutes. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to do the same exact thing for like 2 or 3 rounds. We're going to go 1 minute. Breathe the same way you just did. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll say 10 seconds, 2 breaths, stop. When I say stop, you're going to exhale. So whatever breath you're on, you're going to exhale, and then you're just going to stop and hold your breath. You're going to refrain from breathing, and you're just going to witness and experience and relax. Now, I said refrain. I didn't say force yourself to like not breathe. I don't want to see anyone's face turn red because you're forcing and trying to win. This is not about that. As he said, this is all just about experience, okay? So, 1 minute. I'm going to say stop. You're going to hold. Raise your hand as soon as you take your next breath. I will shout out. I'll have the timer on. I'm going to shout out the time, and then right after I give you your time, just go ahead and start breathing again. Because then when the last person's done, we're just going to do the same thing again. And when everyone's done, I'll just say stop, hold your breath, and then we'll raise the hand and get the time again. Does that make sense? Yeah. Any questions on that? Okay.
So just breathe normally until you restart after you lose, or
One breath.
If you feel like you want to reset, sure. Otherwise, you can go right back into the Wim Hof method. And then some cool things will happen. That makes sense. Any questions? So we're breathing for a minute, the Wim Hof style. I'm going to say stop. You're going to refrain from breathing. Raise your hand when you take a breath. And then you can choose to go back doing the method right after, because we're going to retest again. Okay? And then remember your time. All right, we're going to start in 3, 2, and let's start breathing. Here we go. Last breath, and exhale and stop. And witness. Raise your hand when you breathe. Seconds, 41 seconds, 43 seconds, 47 seconds, 50, 54, 55, 56, 101, 104, 107, 110, 112. Remember your number. 119. 131. 137. 157. 210. Stretching. Keep going. We'll go round 2. I think that's everybody. So 10 more seconds. Last 2 breaths. And time. Six, 140, 142, 151, 2 minutes, 205. 214. Everyone done? Awesome. All right, we can stand up. We can sit there wherever you want. You can sit back in your chairs. Let's talk about it. How you feeling? Good, feeling good? Great, feeling Alright, let's talk about it. Throw out raise your hand and throw some feelings out of your experience.
So I mentioned I watched the documentary. They did their own. They went and they did the Wim Hof method for 4 days, and they fully went up the mountain and did it.
Yeah.
And just doing that, as you experience it that quickly.
Very fast. Now getting the cold immersion and stuff, that's what takes the time. But feeling it what he does now, people come to see him and they expect this huge big thing like you see in the documentaries. He's like, all right, let's do it. Feelings, understanding, that's what we'll say. He doesn't want to talk about the science because that's kind of arbitrary as to how it makes you feel. Usually you feel pretty good. It's pretty euphoric, right? And some cool performance feats happen, like holding your breath for 2 minutes and 14 seconds, or doubling. A lot of people doubled or increased quite a bit from round 1. I've had people do this for an hour straight, 8 minutes, with no previous training. 0, zilch, none. That's on the high end. That was pretty impressive. If we kept going and we did this, I bet almost everyone in here would pass a minute 30, 2 minutes. We start approaching 4 minutes for sure, because you start to increase all the oxygen. That's what it's all about. You get all the oxygen in. I heard lightheaded. Yeah.
I was just cracking my knuckles.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Anyone else have an experience you want to share?
I closed my eyes and I thought I was gonna fall asleep.
Okay. Did you see any colors by chance?
I saw white.
Okay.
I saw red and then blue.
Okay. You saw purples?
Yeah, I was
The time went really fast. All of a sudden I was
Oh my.
and I was
When the first person raised their hand, it was 45. And I was like,
That happened. So when I said before that like it alters your perception, that's what I'm talking about. Your brain perception is altered. So here's why that happens. With a lot of like yogic and a lot of like chakras, people talk about chakras. Well, all those people who came up with that stuff hundreds of years ago or like 200 years ago, they did a lot of breath work. And they perceived like, oh, we're seeing colors, and they add a lot of their own perceptions and meaning to it. But as he explains it, because he's basically a scientist who's like very holistic as well too. He's very, Wim Hof is a like very scientifically literate person. That's your nervous system firing. When you get all that oxygen in your brain, your nervous system starts to calibrate. When you're a kid, like the DNS stuff, and you're a baby and you're trying to figure stuff out, your brain is just sending signals, sending until like your thumb moves. And you're like, oh, that's how my thumb moves. I should remember that. And that's happening like millions of times over. So when you get all this oxygen in that recreates that plasticity of your nervous system, which is why you will see colors. It makes your, especially if you close your eyes, you like really, you can see like full things happen in front of you. It's really interesting. And then that's also why like you might start to shake a little bit. When people train with him, like I'm not kidding, they're like doing the worm on the floor. And we don't go to that extent, but if you train with him, you might, if you're gonna go climb Mount Shineshka, it's good to get all that oxygen in. There's a lot of information on him. You can find him all over the internet. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence showing benefits for rheumatoid arthritis, any sort of inflammation, a lot of different illnesses. They're using this holistic method now, and it's remarkable. And I hope it keeps becoming more and more. Inner Fire is his company. He's got a few of them, so you can check that out. Any questions on any of that? So you saw the safety video, like don't do that in water. People have actually died doing the Wim Hof method in water because they tried like, so you see that and they're like, oh my God, I'm gonna go and swim under something and hold my breath. So don't do that. And you feel lightheaded, don't do it while you're driving. It makes sense. Do it in a controlled environment when you're comfortable. So I show that video. Okay, so I gave 2 of these away. I wish I had more. I would have given more away. Everything that we just talked about is like unresisted body weight training for your respiratory system. This is the first patented device to add a resistance to respiratory training. And this has been around for about 40 years. There's 40 years of clinical back evidence. Anyone know who Henry Cejudo is? You watch UFC? Any martial arts fans? So he just won the bantamweight title, so he's a 2-weight champion. He works with a company called Neuroforce One, which helped develop this product, and they use this now. The masks, you probably have seen the masks before. People use those to train for breathing too. But this one actually has 40 years of clinically backed evidence, which is why I use it. If you have that one, yeah, so I didn't bring my other piece. So this part comes off, right? So this is the mouthpiece for like normal use. There's another one in that box. Can you just take that out and show everybody? Okay, so there's another piece that goes in the same way. You can use both of them, but why that piece was actually invented, and just go hold that up real quick and show. So it's like a circular piece, right? And there's like a little attachment. What do you think that's for? That one.
I don't know.
I said this is a clinically used device, right? So trach tubes. So this is not just. We never want to have to do that, right? But for people who are in that situation and have a trach tube, they work on their breathing. Everyone should work on their breathing, from athletes to the highest level, like Henry Cejudo and other Olympians that use this, Australian CrossFit team, excuse me, to anything. It's resistance training for your breathing, basically. So it's going to make all the other things a bit better. It's not training, so I can kind of sound like Darth Vader when you use this. So there's 2 dials. There's an inhale and an exhale, right?
Yeah.
The higher the number, the more resistance. If you've ever used a Concept 2 rower or anything like that, it's the same thing. It's called a taper. So you switch the taper. So if you go like 4, that's a little bit harder than 3, so on and so forth. There's an inhale and an exhale. And then you just breathe into it. Make sure your cheeks don't expand. It's like you're blowing in and out of a straw, like trying to shoot something out of a straw. So. Kind of like that Darth Vader sound, right? So 40 years of experience of clinical backing. And it has a lot of cool numbers behind it. So dyspnea, that's a word I learned actually when I started working with the Breather Fit. Dyspnea, what does dyspnea mean? Without looking at their lows right there. Lack of oxygen. Not having the air, SOB, shortness of breath, right? That's the number one reason why we stop. We're getting smarter with training so we don't just run wind sprints anymore like I did when I played football and played rugby. We was just run. Go run over there. Do that a lot of times. You'd feel dyspnea, trust me. Oh, I can't go. This helps increase that rate. Here's some benefits they've used in groups as far as percentages. I don't have these memorized besides the 88% increase in underwater swim endurance. 88% increase in underwater swim endurance for groups that train with this as opposed to groups that didn't train with this. That's pretty significant, right? That's pretty significant. And it just trains all the things we talked about. This is like the resistance training on top. So all the cylinder breathing, box breathing. This just trains the respiratory muscles' ability to pull air in and push air out. If you can do that at an increased rate, everything kind of works a bit better. Who should use it? Everybody. There should be a manual in the two that got the device. You can look it up. There's a journal. You should journal it and stuff. And if you do any sort of like cardio or any sort of activity, like track it, do the athlete journal, and then retest and see what happens. I would bet you perform a bit better. You could also use this. This is good for your brain. It's good for getting oxygen to the blood, oxygen to the brain, oxygen in the blood to the brain. This is my friend Tyler Pazik. Like I said, he's a sports psychologist. He worked with Oklahoma baseball last year. There's a big name to come out of Oklahoma, Kyler Murray. He's worked with some big athletes. So I did this is an article that I wrote. If you just search Dylan Edwards, Ideal Breathing, you can kind of read some of the stuff I talked about here. And it's a lot of references. Any questions, comments, anything?
On Amazon?
You can get these on Amazon. I have a code actually for you to save like $2. I think that's listed in here. It's the only discount you can get. They're like $50, $49 for these. You can get them for $47. They're expensive, relatively. The masks are like $100. I would use this at any time over a mask because of the taper and the 40 years that I've been finding. But you can also find them on Amazon too. So this is the Breather Fit. If you do look at Amazon, there'll be a white and blue one. That's the Breather. That's not as it doesn't go as high as this. So if you do get it, you find it on Amazon. Look for this color, black and orange. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. If you have any questions, I'll answer questions. I post a lot of content about certain things, fitness, health related. The Breather Fit. PN Medical is the name of the company. PN Medical.
Like I just like sped on the floor.
Filling out the emails, then I'll collect it on the way out.
It's everything. But my neck is
Okay. I'm glad that helped. I'm glad that helped. Actually, hydrating is very important. You always stay hydrated with electrolytes. That helps the signal work better.
because I my back breaks in my bag, which is like the weight bearing.
Yes. So for the GNS stuff that I talked about, they actually have people wear that belt to like learn how to brace and stuff. So you can use that. So when you use it, use that breathing technique. That's a good feedback. You can feel when you breathe into my platform. Yes, thank you. You will feel it. Okay, better try when I teach people, I actually have them wear the belt, and my big practitioners actually have like force gauge that shows you how much pressure. So that's perfect. Good luck. I hope I have the help.
The stats in this room is a big place on the fire. So when you were like talking about me, and then when just now I got real high, I have it like the amount of time to get out of the water, I got one right now. I can't breathe. Like,
Yeah.
like that just blew my mind. So it's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, get the black one, and there's an athlete journal. top settings, you will feel a difference.
Okay.
Who's a partner?
All I have is I don't have any cards. You can just find me on social media, and then I have a link to save like $2 on that thing. So
My goal is safe.
Yes. Okay, you got this last one.
every day, 10 reps in the morning, 10 reps at night. Do it right before performance. Thank you.
So what do you like around it or about in it?
Okay, so put your mouth just on. Yep. So don't try to like fight it or go over it. And then breathe in and breathe out silently. So you have these things. So
Yeah.
like the 2 fingers go up here, thumb goes on here. So you see inhale and exhale, right?
Okay.
And then just imagine like you're breathing through a straw.
Yeah.
If you turn it up like all the way and your cheeks start to puff out, bring it down a notch.
Yeah.
You've gone too far.
Okay.
And then just get better at that and then try and get that extra 60 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Let me know, send some results. You
Yeah.
should have this presentation sent to you so you can go through it.
Yeah.
All my stuff's on there. Reach out to me, let me know how you're doing, show me your progress.
Okay.
Dropped you a follow, by the way.
Oh, there we go.
What did you say?
I dropped you a follow.
I'm sorry, man. I really think you didn't get a lot of applause. I was like, I really was
That's
waiting
okay,
for
that's
that.
okay.
I ruined it with the emails. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Don't
But
worry.
they loved it. That was awesome. That was
Oh,
so cool.
thank
So,
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure, really.
I hope that your test goes well tomorrow, obviously.